Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 261-280. Chapter 261. Burn it, little universe. That's right. Don't you want to see me? I'm here. Yagami Soto turned around and faced Ace. His eyes looked at him briefly, and it was no different from what he remembered. Ace took a breath, his eyes showed turbulent fighting intent, and said, "The strongest. Let's compete." Boss Ace. Seeing Ace directly challenge Iori Soto, many of his crew members swallowed. Although Yagami Kingta looks no different from ordinary people, his reputation is there. However, they followed Ace all the way and never saw Ace lose anyone. The senior cadre of the Eight Gods Pirates, Captain Helding, was also completely suppressed by Ace just now. Maybe, Ace can defeat Yagami Kingta. As newcomers who have just stepped into the new world, they have not really experienced the power of the new world. In their eyes, as long as they win the Eight Gods Kangdu, they will reach the pinnacle of this sea. Although this is indeed the case, the real Four Emperors, the real New World, they have only seen the tip of the iceberg. It's too early to compete with me. Yagami Kangdu put his hands on his back, looked at Ace, and said calmly, "You are too anxious." For the vast majority of pirates, maybe the first half of the growth is very fast, but the process in the new world is extremely slow. The more you grow, the harder it becomes to grow. May only take a few years to reach the level of a rear admiral, but it may take more than 10 years to reach the level of a lieutenant general. And if you want to have the strength of a general, you may not be able to achieve it in your life. Even if he had extremely high talent and tried his best to cultivate, it took him 6 years to climb to the position of the Four Emperors. Ace plans to come up in a year. Do you call moving toward your goal a rush? Ace snorted, and there was no feeling of junior facing senior, some just had the same mentality as Luffy. Yagami Kangdu raised his head, glanced at the crew members behind Ace, and said casually, "You think they and you can bear the name of the Four Emperors?" Who were swept by Yagami Kangdu's eyes all felt inexplicably heart palpitations, and cold sweat broke out from their foreheads. Ace noticed that his crew was being suppressed by Yagami Kangdu's aura, and his face gradually sank. No one is born. Four Emperors, and these are not important. As long as you can win, it is enough. As the voice fell, flames suddenly rose from his body and turned into a burning man. "Leave it to me, Lord Yagami Kangdu." Helding stepped forward. Eight God Kangdu stretched out his hand to stop him, shook his head and said, "You step back." Yes. Since the Eight Gods Kangdu wanted to do it himself, Hyrding naturally had no hard reason. Response, he obediently stepped aside. ZZ. The flames on Ace continued to burn. Yagami Kangdu stood there calmly, his expression not fluctuating. Seems that what he is facing is not a battle, but just the provocation of a willful child. Ace's aura continued to rise with the surge of fighting spirit. Finally, when the momentum reached its peak, he made a bold move. Fire Fist. The most common and the most frequently used trick, was used by Ace. Fist was thrown, and a fiery flame swept in. This flame devoured the entire street in an instant. But, in the face of the blasting flames, Yagami Kangdu just stretched out his white palm and waved it gently. It was as if a gust of wind had danced, and the monstrous flames were scattered and annihilated in front of Yagami Kangdu with a wave. For a while, countless people were silent about it. Boss Ace's Fire Fist. Absolutely ineffective. Someone murmured in his heart, and his heart shook violently. Although Iori had long been expected to be strong, he might be the toughest opponent Ace has ever faced. A little bit stronger than they expected to disperse the Fire Fist with a single wave. It doesn't work, of course. If it can be defeated so easily, then it is not the Four Emperors. Ace did not show any signs of discouragement. Of Yagami Kangdu, the fighting spirit was even more surging. He must win. Yeah, fire ring. Ace jumped up and waved his arms suddenly. A monstrous flame spun up, turned into a pillar of fire, and fell down. The pillar of fire fell, engulfing all directions. The fiery flames instantly enveloped Yagami Kangdu. Hyerding, who was not far away, stepped back into the distance, avoiding the aftermath of the flames. Hit. It's somewhat effective. Many of Ace's crew also stepped back to avoid the aftermath, and there were hints of excitement in their eyes. But, just as their voices fell, a calm voice came from the flames, without any emotion. Is there only so much power? Yagami Kangdu walked out of the flames, and the monstrous flames scattered around his body, unable to touch even a single corner of his clothes. Ace's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help taking a deep breath. Of Yagami Kangdu was a bit beyond his expectations. But along the way, he also encountered many powerful opponents. Such as the Lieutenant General of the headquarters of the Navy, but he has passed all of them one by one. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 262. Crazy, a powerful enemy never seen before. This is just the beginning. Ace let out a low drink, his arms burst into fiery flames, condensed in the form of a spear, and threw it suddenly at Yagami Kangdu. God fire does not know fire. While throwing the flame spear, Ace didn't stop. The whole person jumped up again, flames erupted from the whole body, and frantically threw the flame spear to Yagami Kangdu. Boom, boom, boom. Ace, who was recklessly burst into power, every spear that fell, like a one heavy artillery shell, exploded in the field. The monstrous momentum continued to erupt, and the flames stirred up and burned, forcing the onlookers to retreat. Boss Ace. The scorching heat wave swept in all directions, forcing Ace's crew to cover their cheeks and stare nervously at the arena. Ace threw the flame spears one after another, and the whole person ran around the field and tossed. But, just as he threw more than 20 flame spears in a row, a fist suddenly appeared from the flames and hit Ace's belly. The sky is full of flames. Flew backwards in an instant, as if being hit hard. Crashed into a building and smashed into a tough biscuit wall. The flames dissipated, and the figure of Yagami Kangdu emerged from the flames, and slowly retracted his fist. Boss Ace. No way. The expressions of many Ace's crew members changed drastically, revealing a bit of horror. Ace fought for a long time to no avail. Yagami Kangdu just punched Ace out. How could the gap be so big? Cough. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and jumped off the wall. Well, physical skills are not bad. Yagami Kanto looked at Ace and spoke calmly. If he completely relied on the fruit's ability and his physical skills were average, Ace should not be able to get up with his random punch just now. Even without fruit ability, Ace's strength is very strong. This can be seen from the fact that Ace has always been able to beat Luffy, and Blackbeard's evaluation of him in the battle with Blackbeard. Ace gasped sharply. You are the strongest I have ever met so far. He took a deep breath, and there was determination and conviction in his eyes. But he will definitely win. Mirror fire. The flames all over Ace erupted frantically again, turning into monstrous flames, and swept away towards Kangdu of the 8 gods. He knew that ordinary long-range attacks were useless against Yagami Kanto. Therefore, while performing this move, the whole person also rushed towards Yagami Kangdu under the cover of Jinghoyan. Yagami Kangdu waved his hand, and the monstrous mirror flames were swayed away by him. But at this moment, Ace's fist mixed with flames also slammed down at Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kangdu waved his arm. Bang! Ace's fist was blocked, and the flames rolled back in Ace's direction, unable to invade Yagami Soto. Hey, arrogant! Iori Aoto glanced at Ace's fist in surprise. He not only felt the flames in Ace, but also felt the power of a domineering armed color. The self-awakening inspired by the unconscious has to say that the talents of the brothers Ace and Luffy really make many people jealous, and their bloodlines are inherited. Don't underestimate me too much. Ace shouted loudly, surrounded by flames in a faintly armed arrogance, and continuously punched and bombarded at Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Sudo stepped back and waved his arms to parry Ace's attack. Despite Ace's mad attack, he always blocked all of Ace's attacks. Even if you can be domineering, is it only this level? Yagami Kangdu murmured. After blocking Ace's more than 20 attacks in a row, he slammed a punch and broke through Ace's defense. There was no 8-door Dunjia formation. Ordinary punch. Bang! The flames in the sky froze, and Ace's whole body froze. The body instantly bent into a shrimp shape, and the air faintly rippled. The whole person flew out like a stray bullet. Boom, boom, boom. It smashed 3 buildings in a row, and Ace's back slammed into one side. On the stone wall, it stopped, and blood spurted out of his mouth. Boss Ace. It's not an opponent at all. How could this be? The strength of Boss Ace is. Many Ace's crew looked at this scene, showing a bit of horror. Stupid. At this moment, the gap between Ace and Yagami Soto can be seen. Like the sky and the earth, an insurmountable gap. It's not that Ace is weak, but the strength of Yagami Kangdu. It's a bit outrageous. Cough, cough. Ace is embedded in the stone wall, coughing violently. Blood on his face, and a little blood was constantly spitting out as he coughed. He struggled for a while, barely breaking free from the stone wall. Falling to the ground, the whole person staggered and almost fell, barely keeping up. Chapter 263. The world is different, Ace in seconds. How can the gap be so big? His vision was slightly blurred, and he looked in the direction of Yagami Kangdu, unable to keep calm in his heart. Although Helding is a bit tricky, he is completely confident of victory. Hyrding is already a high-level executive of the Yagami Pirates, and even if Yagami Kangdu as the captain is strong, he may not be much stronger than Hyrding. But the fact is, Hyrding and Yagami Kangdu are not on the same level at all, and even Ace has no way of knowing how much the gap between them is. Level. Boss Ace. Are you all right? Many of Ace's subordinates came to their senses and ran over in a panic, trying to help Ace. At this time, Yagami Kanto also slowly walked towards Ace. You, let us go. Ace's vision became clear again, and he looked at Kangdu Iori who was approaching. He pushed away the person who was supporting him, and shouted at everyone. At the same time, he crossed his hands in front of him and took a step forward. Yan online. The blazing flames intertwined and instantly turned into a large net, appearing behind Ace, blocking everyone from behind. Captain. Boss Ace, what are you doing? Forced back by the heat wave wrapped in the fiery flames, many of Ace's subordinates were panicked. However, with the flames blocking their sight, they could no longer see Ace. Ace didn't talk to them anymore, and looked resolutely at Yagami Kanto who came over. Our battle is not over yet. That is to say, before the battle with you is over, I can't chase your subordinates, right? Xiao Chong is playing tricks. Yagami Kanto looked at Ace calmly. Ace didn't respond, just waved his arms sharply. One after another fiery flames were madly stimulated and spread in all directions. The great flame ring. The circles of flames spun, turned into monstrous pillars of fire, converged toward the sky, and finally turned into a huge fireball, intertwined on the sky. Emperor Yan. Ace raised the dazzling fireball with one hand, and looked at Kangdu, the 8 gods, without flinching. Yagami Kangdu glanced at the fireball, and it was easy to see the power contained in it. Ace is similar to Straw Hat Luffy. Both have the characteristics of being stronger and stronger, and they can continue to grow in battle. This move is somewhat remarkable. Drink ah. In the next instant, Ace let out an angry shout. Unleash all the power and smash the huge sun-like fireball at Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kangdu stood on the spot, with the 5 fingers of his right hand clasped together to make a fist, and he simply waved. A little more serious. Boom. The moment the huge fireball came to the front of Yagami Kangdu's fist, it stopped. The time and space seemed to be in. The fireball with boundless power was stagnant in an instant, and it was blasted by Yagami Kangdu with one punch. Boom! Under Yagami Kangdu's punch, Ace's Yan Emperor collapsed like a weak flame. The entire street in front of him seemed to be swept away by some kind of terrifying impact. The buildings were destroyed and shattered, and the ground was blasted out of a ravine that spread to the sky. Ace's body flew high and fell heavily on the edge of the town. "Stop moving. It's over." Hyerding watched this scene, stretched out his body, walked to the side of Yashin Kangdu, and said, "In the case of nature, it shouldn't be dead, right? Do you want to catch it? How are our people?" Yagami Kangdu did not answer, but looked at Hyerding and asked a question. Hyerding said, "I was injured a lot, but there was no death." That kid kept his hand. "Oh." 8-God Kangdu nodded slightly and said, "Then do and pay attention to him. If he intends to stay, report back to me." After leaving a sentence, Yagami Kangdu's figure flickered and came to an altitude of several hundred meters. Crossed a black arc and flew to the sky. Inside the Sky Island Palace. When Yagami Kanto came back, Nina had already received the specifics of what happened below. The power of burning the fruit. Don't you plan to stay? When Iori Soto walked into the palace, Nina just hung up the phone bug and asked Iori Soto. Although they can't strip the devil fruit from the body of the capable person, but just like Katakuri, it is also a feasible way to be imprisoned and slowly transformed. "No. A1 burn fruit is nothing, I want to see how things develop." Yagami Kanto took off his jacket, his eyes flickering slightly. Ace didn't go to Whitebeard, but ran over to challenge him, which surprised him. After he is defeated is also unpredictable by Yagami Kanto. Ace will go to Whitebeard again. If he doesn't go, then the subsequent development will be completely off the axis, and he has no hobby of accepting people as sons. However, Yagami Kanto doesn't really care. With his current status, the war and the like are no longer enough to become a key event. All he has to do is wait for the soul fruit to appear, and take it into his own hands. Then rely on this fruit and the ability of other gods to implement the plan to destroy the 4 emperors. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 264. News of the soul fruit, the most dangerous place. 3 months later. Fire Fist Ace joined the Whitebeard Pirates. Little out of the ordinary, but expected. "I defeated Shichibukai Jinpei by a small margin, then I lost to Whitebeard and joined the Whitebeard Pirates." Listening to Nina's report to him, Yagami Sudo rested his chin in one hand. A slight gap defeated Jinbei, but it was not very unexpected. Ace was taught a lesson by him, and it is estimated that he has grown a little bit. But the follow-up still added Whitebeard, which was something that Yagami Kangdu could think of, but was still slightly surprised. The mysterious power that plot needs. His heart, Yagami Kangdu ignored it and put it aside. At this moment, Nina, who was sorting documents in the distance, rang the phone bug on her body. She took out the phone bug to answer with her expression unchanged. However, after only 2 sentences, her expression changed slightly. "The 8 gods Kangdu, the soul fruit has appeared." Was such a simple sentence that made the previous moment. Leaning against the back of the sofa, Yagami Kangdu, who was lying there lazily, suddenly opened his eyes the next moment. In those eyes, there was a touch of unprecedented fierceness. Where? There are no excessive words, just the simplest question. Nina held the phone bug in one hand, took a deep breath, and said slowly, "Holy Land. Mary Joa. Mary Joa." Hearing Nina's words, Iori Kangdu frowned slightly and said, "Are you sure?" Where the soul fruit appeared was actually Mary Joa, which was probably the worst place in the world. And the question is, how did his intelligence agency know that the soul fruit appeared in Mary Joa before his intelligence agency had penetrated into the world government? It's the devil fruit collection channel of the world government. Nina brought the phone bug over and put it in the tea. The voice of the intelligence unit commander came from the phone bug. The world government has been collecting all kinds of devil fruits. The soul and soul fruit is one of the fruits discovered and collected by the world government. When we get the news, it's too late to rob it. Devil fruit is one of the fundamental powers in this world, especially those. A powerful natural system can create a top powerhouse in almost a short period of time. 4. Devil fruits. The collection of the world government is undoubtedly more exaggerated than any other force. Yagami Kingdu sometimes even wonders if Doflamingo got the burning fruit through the world government's channels. After all, as a former Tianlong person, he has connections with the 5 old stars. However, with the death of Doflamingo, there is no answer to all this. World government. Yagami Kingdu's eyes flickered for a while. He didn't feel any surprise that the soul fruit was found by the world government. No intelligence agency in the world can be compared with the world government. The world government can even monitor the phone bugs of their 4 emperors, and there is always that kind of surveillance in the sky above the world. Seagulls are flying around. Because the position is too high, the space is too large, and the killing can't be finished, it can only be ignored. Are you sure it was sent to Mary Joa? Yagami Kingdu asked in a deep voice. Phone said in a condensed voice, maybe it hasn't reached Mary Joa yet, but it should be almost time to reach the Red Land continent. Now it's too late to rob it halfway. I am very sorry, Lord Yagami Kingdu, if we could gather information faster. There was a hint of apology and remorse in his tone. If it could be half a day earlier, there would be a chance to rob it halfway, but the fact is that there is not even half a day. Once the soul fruit enters the Holy Land Mary Joa, it is equivalent to entering the Forbidden Land. Although, there was a Murloc tiger who released slaves in the Holy Land many years ago. Where the slaves were held was in the most generally guarded outskirts of Mary Joa. Tiger just set a fire, opened some cages and escaped. Something like the devil fruit, especially the soul fruit, is the ability of the first 4 emperors. Once obtained by the world government, I am afraid it will immediately be sent to the most heavily guarded treasure house. The center of the Holy Land Mary Joa. There is not only 0 Feet's base camp, but also the army's commander-in-chief Cyborg Kong, and even the existence of the 5 old stars. No one dares to break into there. The Navy headquarters was invaded, and the advanced city prison was escaped. But only the Holy Land Mary Joa, even the Beast Kaido never broke in. Once the Beast Kaido tried to break into Mary Joa, but before he landed on the Red Continent, he was stopped by the admirals. Don't blame yourself. Iori Kingdu said calmly, the government's intelligence agencies are far stronger than ours. You have done a good job of getting the news of the soul fruit. Nina stood aside with a dignified expression. She knew how dangerous the Holy Land Mary Joa was. Chapter 265, Target, Holy Land Mary Joa. What are you going to do? Nina asked solemnly. Of course, a trip to the Holy Land. Yagami Kingdu sat up straight, took a sip from the teacup. In his eyes, and he opened his mouth slowly. He is bound to obtain the soul fruit. Even if he entered the Holy Land, then what the 8 gods Kingdu wanted to get, the Longtan Tiger Cave had to be taken back. More than half a year has passed since the battle with Whitebeard. Except for the past 6 months or so, cultivation is leisurely, although it is quite leisurely, it is still too boring. Ace didn't make him feel the thrill of fighting at all. Just right. This time, let's go and see what secrets are hidden inside the Holy Land Mary Joa. Come on. Nina closed her eyes. She is familiar with Yagami Kingdu's character, and knows that when Yagami Kingdu makes a decision, no one can stop her. Don't worry. Yagami Kingdu looked at Nina tenderly, and said, Mary Joa still can't keep me, not to mention she should have a deep understanding of the power of the government. Order to avoid a real war in the future, and suffer a big loss because of the unknown. The world government knows about each of the 4 emperors, including the 8 gods pirates, but everyone is completely unknown to the world government. A blank 100 years. Vacant throne. I am on the top of the 5 old stars. Zero of the previous generation. Admiral of the same era as General Marshal Cyborg Kong. Everything belongs to the unknown, so that the center of the Holy Land Marioa is always shrouded in mist. For hundreds of years, no one dared to invade and step into it. Huh. Nina knew she couldn't stop Yagami Kanto. She called out, "Wait a minute, I'm going to sort out the information of the world government. Since it can't be stopped, try your best to reduce the crisis. Learn so far about the Holy Land Marihoa to Yagami Suto." Good. Yagami Kanto nodded. He has absolute confidence in his current strength and ability, but there is no such thing as too much information. He can't enter the Holy Land but can't find where the soul fruit is placed. Half an hour later, Nina came back here with some documents. The document contains a map of the architectural structure of the Holy Land Marijoa, as well as information about the Army General Marshal, Steel Skeleton, and some other high-ranking government officials. The structure of Marijoa is not complicated. Red Earth continent traverses the sea, dividing the Great Root into the first half and the second half, and Marijoa is located at the central point of the junction. Ahead is the heavily guarded New World 1 branch base, and in the back is Marine Headquarters Marineford. The garrison force can be said to make countless forces dare not invade. Behind the branch base and in front of Marineford, near the Red Earth continent, are two huge red seaports. Of the world government and the Navy are, through the special means of transportation in this seaport, board the towering Red Earth continent, and step into the Holy Land of Marijoa. Directly in front of Marijoa is a huge forest manor with artificial greenery. Deep down along the forest estate is Pongol Castle. It is also the core of the power of the world government. The 5 old stars, the General Marshal Cyborg Kong, almost all stay in the Pongol Castle, which is also the only place where the Navy and government officials are allowed to enter. Going further down the Pongol Castle is Tianlongmen, leading to the residence of the Tianlong people, except Tianlong people and slaves, attendants. No one is allowed to step in, including the Admiral. Steel Skeleton. Yagami Kangdu held the information of the steel bone in his hand and fell into contemplation. Of the steel bone sky. During his tenure as an admiral, he had defeated countless pirates, and his strength was extremely strong. But now he is about the same age as Whitebeard. How much he has lost with aging. Fighting power is unknown. The information on the 5 old stars is completely vacant. Yagami Kangdu quickly flipped through the information, but couldn't find anything specific about the 5 old stars, let alone Yimu. There are not many people who know the existence of IM, so naturally it is impossible to appear in the data. Yes. Nina nodded and said, "It is completely unknown, but according to some clues, it is inferred that the 5 old stars should not all be combat power." It's possible. Iori Kangdu nodded and said, "And even if they are fighting, they are not too young, how much can they show? Even if the strength of the 5 old stars has the level of a Navy admiral, but in the case of aging, it is inferior in some aspects. At most, it is close to Marco, Katakuri. And Marco, Katakuri's level characters, even if they come to the previous batch, Yagami Kangdu can calmly deal with them, come and go freely. However, all of this is just based on data analysis and judgment. What the specific situation is, only if he personally goes to the Holy Land can he really confirm it. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 266. The Heart of the Strong, Fearless. Red Earth Continent. Taking the bubble cable car, a group of people from the world government, escorting a large amount of goods, came to the 3rd port on the edge of the Holy Land. Finally delivered. Heavenly gold. Finally set foot on the port, some world government officials breathed a sigh of relief. The gold in the sky is not an absolutely safe job, although there are 0 escorts throughout the whole process, but occasionally it will be robbed. And of gold in the sky is not something that can be done peacefully. In some countries, the bad guys are talking about poverty, they can't even afford to eat, they can't pay the gold in the sky, they really deserve to die. Thank you for your hard work. Some government officials spoke to 0 people. Man waved his hand and said, "Next, it will be delivered to the world's nobles." Yes, please escort you here. The officials of the world government want to return to Pongal Castle to return to work, and the remaining transfer work will be performed by 0. Several 0s nodded, and it was not the first time for them to escort heavenly gold. And at this time, the human captain suddenly glanced in a certain direction. "What's wrong?" asked the person next to him. Chang released his arrogance and sensed it for a while, but he couldn't sense anything, so he couldn't help shaking his head. "Nothing. It must be an illusion." Just after a few people left with the gold in the sky, next to a red rock in that direction, the void suddenly twisted. A figure emerged. It was King Yagami. He did not choose to invade directly from the top of the Holy Land, because according to the information he learned, there is some kind of special equipment over Mary Joa to monitor in real time, preventing anyone from trying to invade and cross from the sky. Using Shinwei's ability to move with space ability, he easily came to the Red Soil continent. However, just had a photo with Captain Zero. It was almost discovered to be said that the defenses of the Holy Land Mary Joa are very strict. Except, Yagami Kangdu, I am afraid that the moment Ren approaches, he will be discovered. Gold in the sky. Yagami Kantu stared at Zero in the direction the government was leaving, and there was no wave in the ancient well in his eyes. For the ugly side of this world, he has seen too much. And he is no longer moved by it in his heart. The Tianlong people have been in that position for a long time, and even without him, they will be knocked down sooner or later. But now that he is here, the person who does this will not be a revolutionary army, nor a pirate king, but him. Step forward. Yagami Kanto followed the people who were escorting the gold from the sky, and quickly crossed the artificial green forest in the first half of Marijoya. Come to the power center of the world government, Pongal Castle. This is not a towering building, but from a distance, it gives people a majestic and royal aura. Even of the naval headquarters that Yagami Sudo had destroyed could not compare to this castle that did not seem to have much defense. Because it represents the center of the world government, and the supreme power of the world government stands here. Pongal Castle. Yagami Kangdu looked at the castle with a little glimmer of light in his eyes. He didn't use the sight, hearing and color to perceive crudely, because there are not many strong people who are proficient in seeing, hearing, and color. Once he perceives with sight, hearing and color, the other party will also be able to discover his existence. Hard to say. Yagami Kangdu is not very afraid of 5 old stars. Because the 5 old stars are only the 5 people with the highest status among the Tianlong people, as a Tianlong person, they may not have much fighting strength when they are in power. Tianlong people will go to fight, I am afraid they will not be in their entire lives. Haven't experienced a real battle, and won't be strong no matter what. Even with the help of the government's intelligence agencies, the top devil fruits could not be better than the admiral. What really makes Yagami Aoto care about is the people behind the scenes. Why Doflamingo knew that the fruit of the operation can use the operation of the ageless operation. There is no doubt that someone in history must have used this operation. If a person lives for hundreds of years, what will happen? Maybe there will be limits in physique and the like, but things like seeing, hearing, and armed will probably reach a terrifying level. Of course. Concern is not the same as fear. Today he is recognized as the strongest in the world. From a long time ago, he had no fear of the world government. Even the terrifying existences of the Otsutsugi clan were not taken seriously by Yagami Soto. And after the improvement of the 3-color domineering, Yagami Kangdu's suppression of the world power from the world of pirates has weakened a lot. Now that he has become the strongest in the pirate world, facing the unknown, it is impossible to have a fearful heart. If nothing else happens, the soul fruit should be placed in the core warehouse, but it still needs to be confirmed. Yagami Kanto murmured in a low voice. Chapter 267. make a splash, Mary Joa. The Holy Land Mary Joa has a huge warehouse, which stores all kinds of weapons, forbidden items and the like. In addition to the warehouse on the bright side, there is also a core warehouse, which stores extremely precious things. Even Tianlong people, without the permission of the 5 old stars, are forbidden to take things in the core warehouse. Regarding the location of the core warehouse, Yagami Kangdu learned from the information that this is a favorable situation for him. Swish! Yagami Soto transformed into a memory image of a government official through ninjutsu. Looking at the Pongal castle in front of him, Yagami Kanto just walked over. Don't worry about being discovered. Except for the top seeing and seeing colors, although ordinary seeing and hearing colors can perceive people's movements, they cannot replace the eyes. Therefore, people who fake ninjutsu can still confuse most people. Soon, Yagami Kangdu walked to the main entrance of the castle, and the guards outside the castle saw Yagami Kangdu and bowed to Yagami Kangdu without any obstruction. After entering Pongal Castle, Yagami Kanto walked around naturally. After going around for a while, I began to look for accurate information on the soul fruit. Although he has not been engaged in intelligence gathering work for a long time, the standard in this regard is not far behind. Not long after, Yagami Kangdu got accurate information, and the soul fruit was sent to the Holy Land Mary Joa a day ago, and it was recorded into the warehouse, and it was indeed included in the core warehouse. Core warehouse. After the eyes of Yagami Kanto flickered slightly, he quickly came to the underground of the Holy Land Mary Joa. Whether it is the warehouse on the bright side or the core warehouse, it is located in the underground of Mary Joa. It's just that the location of the core warehouse is more hidden and the defense is more strict. Mary Joa's underground. What is shown here is an extremely ugly side. On the ground are all pulled by manpower. Yagami Kanto is very clear that this is a certain existence who wants to express the darkness hidden under the light. But when it comes to this world, that's what really exists. For the world government, it is not difficult for Vegapunk to study a mechanically powered self-propelled trail. But they are willing to let people pull it manually, which is more interesting in the eyes of the Tianlong people, and it can also be regarded as giving the pariahs a little meaning to survive. Silently, Yagami Kanto's body escaped into the darkness. The underground of Mary Joa is a large space. However, Yagami Kangdu already had information on the map, and soon found the huge warehouse on the bright side. There were 4 guards guarding the door of the warehouse, and 2 teams of guards were patrolling back and forth, but they couldn't find Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Soto came to a wall of the warehouse. Demonstrating the power of divine power, Yagami Kangdu quickly disappeared into the rippling void. Inside the warehouse, there are relatively dim lights here, and a magnificent and wide scene. Countless standard swords, guns and ammunition are neatly placed here, with no end in sight. Although the naval headquarters also has an arsenal, it is far from being on a par with that of the world government. Whenever there is a shortage of ammunition on the Navy side, it has to go to the government to transport and fill the shortage. Step, 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 Yagami Kangdu was walking in the warehouse. Although he knew there was surveillance in the warehouse, he didn't care. With his divine power, the surveillance phone bug couldn't capture him. Every step down is a flicker, and after about a minute, Yagami Kangdu crossed the huge hall in front of the warehouse and came to the back. Here, there is a house made of Halu stone. The house is not big, and it is much smaller than the outer warehouse where standard swords and guns are placed. This is undoubtedly the core warehouse. Halu stone. Yagami Kangdu frowned and came to the outside of the core warehouse. This core warehouse is probably surprisingly thick. And it is very likely that it is made of a layer of seafloor stone and a layer of high-strength steel, layer by layer. Because the outer wall of the advanced city is made in this way, as a core warehouse, it will not be worse than that made by such a huge advanced city. This kind of outer wall, although not harder than the historical stone tablet, it is not an easy task to break the 5 Because it is too thick, and it is divided into many layers, so that the whole can bear the force evenly. Ordinarily my ability should be able to get in. Yagami Kangdu looked at the outer wall of the core warehouse and pondered for a while. Although the inside and outside are completely isolated, the power of space should be able to connect the inside and outside. Using the method of crossing the space, he went directly into his eyes, and a coldness flashed in his eyes. Now that he is here, how can he not leave a little proof that he has been there? Yagami Kangdu walked towards the thick wall, and the 5 fingers of his right hand folded together. Without saying a word, raising it is a punch. Boom! This punch is incredible. This is a punch from Yagami Kangta as the 4 emperors and the strongest in the world. In terms of frontal attack power, this punch is even comparable to Whitebeard's peak state. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 268. The Violent, Extremely Arrogant Iori Kangdu. Boom! The huge vibration shook all directions in an instant, making the entire underground warehouse feel like an earthquake, and countless weapons fell down. The guards guarding the warehouse were also unstable, swaying to and fro, almost falling. What's going on? Is there an earthquake? The guards of the guards barely stabilized their bodies and looked at each other, all showing a bit of astonishment, and they had never heard of an earthquake on the Red Soil continent. Just when they were in doubt. Boom! Another thunderous roar. This time, not only the underground, but even the Red Earth continent on the ground was also full of chickens and dogs, and there was a sound of teacups shattering in Pongal Castle. What's the matter? The commander-in-chief of the entire army, Steel Skeleton, stood up with a swish. Who were among the highest powers, almost fell over with the sofa. A little embarrassed, he stood up and looked at the broken teacup. Quote. Several people had expressions of surprise on their faces. Boom, boom, boom. Just as their expressions changed, a continuous roar began to shake the sky and earth, and the entire Holy Land Marijoa was shaken. In the Tianlong people's residence behind Tianlongmen, countless Tianlong people screaming in horror, he ran out in chaos. Some people were riding the slaves, and they were panicked and ordered the slaves to crawl. He fell off the slave's back and was hit directly in the face by the overturned table. The whole holy place is a piece of chicken flying and dogs jumping. At the same time, on the outside of the underground core warehouse, Yagami Kangdu slammed his fists, punch after punch without any fancy or aesthetic feeling, and smashed towards the outer wall of the core warehouse. Boom, boom, boom. Under Yagami Kangdu's punch, obvious deformation and cracks appeared on the outer wall of the core warehouse, and the inner steel layer could be vaguely seen. Under the continuous bombardment, the steel layer also shattered, revealing a certain special ore layer deeper. I don't know how thick this core warehouse is, how many layers it has, and what kind of unloading and dispersing frame is designed. But there is no doubt that it is not as hard as the historical stone. The outer wall of Halu stone has little effect on Yagami Kangdu. Even if the 8 gods Kangdu didn't use the ability of the 8 gates Dunjia formation, just relying on the domineering weapons, a punch of ordinary thickness can directly smash the Halu stone into pieces. The seafloor stone layer, the Yardman steel layer, the cotton black ore layer. The outer walls of the layers, under the hammering of Yagami Kangdu's fist, successively appeared cracks and spread deeper. I don't know how long it took. Boom! With an earth-shattering roar, the entire outer wall was completely shattered, and a big hole that was 3 feet round was smashed by Yashin Kangdu. Oh, the force was too much. Yagami Kangdu looked at the cave that was smashed out, and touched the back of his head. I don't know if the stones and iron that splashed into it smashed the contents inside. Although the devil fruit is smashed, it does not affect eating, but it is a troublesome thing if it is too smashed. 2 people eat the same devil fruit fragments at the same time, only the person who eats it first will gain the power of the devil fruit. No matter how it is at the same time, there will always be a sequence on the time scale, even if it is 0.0000001 seconds. If the soul fruit is broken, then he has to collect all the fragments. Otherwise, if the world government finds someone to come and eat the pieces, it will be troublesome. Without hesitation. Although the 3-foot round hole was difficult to get into, Yagami Kingdu did not intend to continue destroying it. The resulting movement was big enough, and Yagami Kingdu directly used his divine power to enter the cruel interior. Have to say, this core warehouse is still quite sturdy, and the design of the unloading layer and the force-bearing layer are almost just right. Even if Yagami Kingdu smashed like this, in the end, it only shattered a hole, not the whole. The space in the core warehouse is not very large, and there are many quaint wooden cabinets and wooden boxes placed here. Several wooden boxes were smashed by stones and iron blocks, revealing the contents inside. Some are devil fruits, some are swords, and they seem to be one of the 12 great swords, and some are drop-shaped sapphires the size of half a palm. All are rare treasures. But Iori Kingdu just glanced at it and ignored it all. His only purpose now is soul fruit, find soul fruit first, and then look at other things. Just after Yagami Kingdu entered the core warehouse, the violent earthquake stopped, but the Tianlong people still suffered heavy casualties because of their panic. Some people were so unlucky that they even died in this artificial earthquake. Between the powers at the highest level of Kongal Castle, the military commander-in-chief Cyborg Kong is also here, and he is ordering government officials with the 5 old stars to investigate what is going on. Chapter 269. Shock, Angry 5 Old Stars. Report to the Marshal, the 5 old stars. At this moment, an official of the world government ran in and said tremblingly, the source of the vibration is the underground. The core warehouse. There is no doubt about the technological means within the world government. All kinds of monitoring devices, all kinds of telephone bugs, almost all exist. Under the circumstances that alarmed the 5 old stars and the Chief Marshal Cyborg Kong, all the world government officials were jumping up and down. Almost a moment to find out the source of the problem. What? Hearing the man's report, Wu Laoxing and Gangji Yukong changed their expressions at the same time. How is the core warehouse? The outer wall has been destroyed, it's a pirate. Yagami Kingdu. Are many types of phone bugs monitoring the core warehouse. In addition to the simplest video phone bugs, there are also advanced radar phone bugs, life scanners, etc. After all, it is one of the most important places for the entire world government to be on guard. The 8 gods. This time, Wu Laoxing's complexion finally changed drastically. Core warehouse was not only destroyed, but also people entered, and the person who entered was Yagami Kingdu. This is worth it. If the items in there are taken away by Yagami Kingdu, let alone the other 4 emperors, even the Navy headquarters, I am afraid they will not be able to check and balance the Yagami pirates. Bring me all over here. The 5 old stars who were shocked, immediately shouted and ordered. All go too. After the General Marshal Gang Gukong's complexion changed, he was very clear about the seriousness of the problem. Immediately rushed out of the room and went straight to the core warehouse of the underground base. With Zero and the steel bones empty, Wu Laoxing's expression softened a little. Tension and urgency subsided, it was replaced by anger. It's simply daring. This is the Holy Land Marijoa, and the core warehouse is the most heavily guarded place right below the Pongal Castle. Many years ago, although Tiger the Murloc did something, it was only in the outermost layer. A fire was set in the underground prison where the slaves were being held, some people were rescued, and they jumped into the sea to escape. Yagami Kingdu has invaded the center of the Holy Land, invaded directly under the Pongal Castle, and has forced his way into the core warehouse. Mad. There are 5 old stars who suppress their anger. At this time, another government rushed in a hurry and reported the damage to the Tianlong domain to the 5 old stars. Several buildings collapsed due to the violent shock, and the Tianlong people trampled on each other in panic, seriously injuring 4 people, 13 people lightly, and 2 people dead. Dragon people are in extreme panic now, and they have asked to send the admiral and all the staff to protect them. The government official reported in a trembling voice. Was almost mad when he heard the report. The 8th God's Kingdom invaded the core warehouse here, and the Tianlong people actually died too and injured a group, and they also asked All Zero to protect them. Trash. This could not help but remind them of the fish-man tiger who made trouble. That is to say, because a fire was set, the frightened Tianlong people demanded personal protection of all members. As a result, Zero didn't go to arrest people. When the Navy arrived, it was already too late, and everyone ran away. Pongal Castle. Located in a special area, in a very strange room. Not many people are qualified to step into this room, and even most government officials are unaware of the existence of this place, and it is a restricted area within the restricted area. Here it is, among the flowers. In the center of the flowers, a dark figure was standing there, looking at the surrounding rooms that had been destroyed by the earthquake. There was silence for a while. Looks like something happened, Lord I am. A figure emerges from the darkness. I am remained silent. Sombra asked, do you need me to go? I am. Holy Land Mary Joa. Underground, core warehouse. In the mess, Yagami Kingdu finally found out. A strangely shaped devil fruit. On the surface are like floating souls. I found it. During this time, Yagami Kingdu had already memorized the pattern of the soul fruit in his heart, and he recognized it the moment he pulled it out of the wooden box. It came. Resolutely pocket the soul fruit. He glanced at the devil fruits scattered all over the place, although he didn't know them, but these. I am afraid that the worst is also the ancient animal species, and the precious ones are probably the natural and magical beast species. I have already got the soul and soul fruit. Now, don't be too greedy, the rest. Just pack it and take it away. Yagami Kingdu thought about it, tore off his cloak, and shook the void. Whispering. All the messy devil fruits were collected by him, including the 2 supreme swords and 12 workers, as well as 5 or 6, the highest treasures that even Fishman Island did not have. The detective exerts divine might. Yagami Kingdu took a step forward and came to the outside of the hole. Then Yagami Kingdu saw a group of 0 members standing on the left side of the hole. The first person wore glasses, and his face was cold and depressed. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 270, Living Legend, Cyborg Kong. And right in front of the hole, a strong man with a shaved mohawk head walked over with a sullen face. Every step you take is a shock. He is the former admiral of the Navy, and the current general marshal of the world government, above the warring states period. Steel bone is empty, put things down, Yagami Kingdu. Gang Gukong looked at Yagami Kingdu coldly, he didn't know what Yagami Kingdu had taken. But everything in the core warehouse is extremely valuable, and it is impossible for Yagami Kingdu to take it away. The 8th God's Kingdu glanced at Genji Yukong indifferently, and said, oh, it turns out to be Marshal Kong. As the previous naval marshal and the current general of the entire army, Gang Gukong's strength when he was young is unquestionable, and he is also a terrifying existence that stuns the sea. Before the era of the great pirates, the only person who defeated him was the one in the form of a vampire of the animal-type phantom beast. Other than that, no one beat him. And it goes without saying that the strength of that person, he does not have any crew members, he is alone, and he can fight against the Roger pirates and the Whitebeard pirates by himself. Of course. These, all are from the past. Let me leave something, now you. Do you still have that ability? Yagami Kingdu said casually, and out of the corner of his eye swept over the few people at 0. At the moment when the voice fell, he took a step forward, and the whole person suddenly rushed towards the direction where no one was on the right. If it wasn't for the Holy Land Mary Joa, he wouldn't mind having a few tricks with Cyborg. Now, he doesn't have that interest. Whoosh! Almost in an instant, Yagami Kingdu appeared hundreds of meters away. Just as Yagami Kingdu was about to continue to escape, a figure with a terrifying explosive force, relying on the speed of pure flesh, forcibly rushed over and slammed a fist into Yagami Kengdu's back. Fist fell, the impact of the compressed air had already whistled. Yagami Kengdu turned around in the air and threw a punch. Fighting fists, he has never been afraid of anyone. Boom! The fist that was wrapped in the armor of the 8 doors collided with the lacquer-colored fist of Gang Gukong, and a dull roar was emitted. It was like the sound of a bomb that exploded under the cover of an unbreakable. The aftermath wavered. Yagami Kengdu remained motionless, his steel-boned empty arm swayed, and the whole person took a step back. Even the army's general marshal, Gang Kuo-kong, was a terrifying powerhouse who swept across the sea and defeated countless pirates. In the face-to-face confrontation, it is also inferior to Yagami Kengdu. There is no doubt. At the age of less than 30 years old, Yagami Kengdu is at the peak of everything. In a one-on-one state, it is an absolutely invincible existence. A punch forced the steel bone back, but Yagami Kengdu's fist was slightly numb. It's because Steel Skeleton Kong's armament is a bit stronger than his, and he didn't fully open the 8 gates Dunjia formation. However, because of its strong resilience, it basically has no effect, and it recovers in an instant. The fruit of strength should be called something else. The old man should retire as soon as possible. Withdrawing his fist, Yagami Kengdu glanced at Steel Skeleton Kong. The power of the punch just now was abnormal, it was a bit too strong in terms of strength, it was even similar to Whitebeard's full-strength punch, and it was estimated that even Garp was slightly inferior. To burst out such a fist based on physical strength alone. In this world, there are fruits that simply increase speed, and there are momo fruits that increase speed, strength and volume at the same time, so there must be fruits that increase strength alone. Enhance physical strength to the extreme. This is the ability of the steel skeleton. The name of the steel bone is probably also because it has a steel-like bone that can withstand such a terrifying burst of physical power. Gangji Yukong didn't speak, but he was secretly shocked by the power of Yagami Kengdu in his heart. Although he is old, he is weaker than when he was young. But because of his physique, his strength didn't actually drop too much. Even if Yagami Kengdu defeated Whitebeard, he had no fear in his heart. Because when he was an admiral, Whitebeard didn't even have the title of the strongest in the world. However, the reality is that the 8 gods Kengdu in front of him, even if he hits with all his strength, he can block it and force him back. It really has grown to an unstoppable level. Gangji Yukong sighed in his heart. He knew about Yagami Kengdu relatively late, but he was also one of the insiders. There is only one feeling about this, and that is the pain in the ass. Whoosh! After forcing the steel frame to retreat, Yagami Kengdu wanted to use his divine might to leave. But at this moment, a strange force suddenly enveloped. Yagami Kengdu raised his brows slightly and gave up his plan to leave immediately. Who can influence him up to now is probably the super powerful person who is comparable to the steel bone empty hidden in the Holy Land. The state surrounding him was extremely strange, as if all the air was swept away in an instant. Not only did it make him unable to breathe, it even felt like it was tearing at his body, pulling all the air out of his lungs. Chapter 271. Hidden Combat Power, the True Heritage of the Holy Land. Absolutely. Vacuum. The new president grew up below Yagami Kengdu, looking at the sky indifferently. Then he made a fist with his right hand and slammed a fist at Yagami Kengdu. Air cannon. Boom. A terrifying air column erupted outrageously, directly shrouding Yashin Kengdu in it, with a might that shook the heavens and the earth. The air impact hit the ceiling, and the extremely thick rock wall above also showed crack-like traces. Boom, boom, boom. Chief Ren did not pause, and after blasting an air cannon, he continued flashes to punch in several directions. Several terrifying air columns were shot in a row, covering Yagami Kengdu in the very center. This power finally condensed and erupted, smashing the land above, revealing the blue sky outside. However, when the compressed air exploded and the aftermath completely dissipated, Yagami Soto's body appeared in the sky. The whole person floated there, but was unscathed. Different space. His eyes flickered with red light. That was the one from Lilai who wrote The Wheel Eyes of Samsara. Hard the air is compressed, and no matter how strong the impact is, it will not be able to smash the space abruptly. This is the limit of the fruit's ability. Elephant Evening. Yagami Kangdu narrowed his eyes and looked at the head of the zero, and muttered, "No. The air fruit of the nature department. There are so many good things in the world government. Natural air fruit. Undoubtedly, this is also a top-level devil fruit. The vacuum field alone is equivalent to a big killer. Put one person in the crowd, those with insufficient physical strength will all be killed in seconds. Not to mention the air cannon that compresses the air just now, I am afraid it is much more tyrannical than the Shichibukai tyrant bear. The bear's paw impact, after all, this is the ability to dominate the air. For the world government. Is only necessary to find a captain or vice president who is decent in all aspects, and then eat such an air fruit, and immediately create a great existence comparable to the Navy. This is the essence of the world government. But now, a large part of the background is carried on his shoulders. Whoosh! Yagami Kangdu had no plans to fight, and after blocking the new air cannon, he flew straight to the sky. Don't try to escape. Steel Skeleton roared angrily, raised his foot and stomped. The power contained in his foot, stepping on the ground, directly caused a large area of crack marks to appear on the ground. It was this explosive force that made him fly out of the sky in an instant. Flesh seems to have surpassed the speed of sound, catching up with the Yagami Kangdu in the sky, and smashing it with a punch. Go away. Yagami Kangdu snorted coldly, and slammed his elbow into Gang Gukong's fist. Armed colored domineering is attached to the fist, and the body is even more domineering. Boom! A roar. The steel bone empty body swayed, because it was in the air, unable to step on the ground to relieve the force, and the whole person could not help but fly to the side. Fly to the sky, damn it. Chong and Kirsten was forced to put away the vacuum field. Otherwise, Steel Skeleton Kong can't use the moon step, and Yagami Kangdu can fly, but it's their side that is bad. Vacuum field is removed, and the steel bone is empty immediately. Step, the top moon step is displayed. It was like an afterimage in the air, chasing after Yagami Kangdu. Whoosh, whoosh. Yagami Soto doesn't care about Cyborg Sora's tracking. He has the ability of divine space, and if he doesn't want to be caught up by others, no one can approach him. Even the empty steel bone Kongyubu was the strongest he had ever seen. Almost in just a moment, Yagami Kangdu had already thrown away the steel bone Kong. But just as Yagami Kangdu was about to use his divine power again, another strange force suddenly enveloped him. Dark prison. This force was like some kind of extremely strong attraction, and it instantly grabbed Yagami Kangdu and dragged Yagami Kangdu back to the ground. Eight-God Kangdu raised his brows slightly, his body trembled, and he forcibly got rid of the attraction of this ability. But being provoked again and again, Yagami Kangdu has no habit of swallowing his voice. Day Tiger. Om. Under the violent shock wave of Yagami Kangdu, the ripples in the space continued, and it collapsed in an instant, blasting out towards the bottom. Today's Eight-God Kangdu is more skilled at the control of the Eight Gates Dunjia formation. It is also a shock wave, even if it is only the Eight-God Kangdu who opened the seventh shock door. The attack power is even stronger than Hyerding and others who opened the eight-door Dunjia formation. In the face of such a shock wave, unless it is a top domineering ability person, or a Space Department Devil Fruit ability person. Faced with this trick, other people will either hide far away, or they will be crushed by the bombardment without any resistance. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 272. I am the real king. Iron Block. Steel Skeleton Kong was the first to endure the oppression of space, and he immediately. He folded his arms in front of him, and displayed a domineering resistance with armed color. His domineering armament is top-notch, stronger than today's Yagami Kangdu, and naturally he can withstand the day tiger. But he couldn't stand on the moon to block it in the air. In front of Yagami Kengdu's Yuhu, he was also forced to be forced back to the ground from the sky and stood on the ground to resist. Break the void. Chief Ren's complexion turned pale, and he raised his hands upward, creating a side that was visible to the naked eye. A wall of air, hard to block the shock wave that was wrapped in terrifying power. The strength of the two is no longer the same level, even with such a strange ability as the air wall, they can't resist the day tiger. Boom! When the two touch, the air wall almost collapses at a touch, and it can't resist it at all. Yagami Kengdu's day tiger directly crushed the air wall and continued to press down horizontally. And at the same time, Pu showed his strange power and ripped apart Yagami Kengdu's burden, also revealed his figure. He was wearing the same black cloak as the 5 old stars, and his face was numb and emotionless. Facing the collapsed space wall, he pushed forward with both hands. Heavenly lock. A strange force was stimulated, twisting and twisting in front of him, turning into a pitch-black vortex, and even the space was distorted before this vortex. When the space wall finally disappeared, he grabbed his right hand, and the pitch-black vortex appeared. It was suddenly compressed, turned into a small black ball, and flew towards the sky. What? Iori Kengdu frowned slightly, and just as he was about to avoid it, the black ball suddenly triggered a terrifying gravitational force. Instantly grabbed his body and attracted him. At the same time, the earth began to crack, and the red earth continent shattered inch by inch. Pieces of rock like mountains rose into the air and flew towards the black ball, as if the black ball had some kind of terrifying attraction. So it is. Aoto Yagami, who sensed this, actually felt certain in his heart. There is nothing wrong. This is the fruit of gravity. It can be said to be the real upper fruit of the devil fruit, such as gravity and fluttering. 4. Gravity is dead. Without gravity, there is no existence at all, and the two are the real relationship between upper and lower. This gravitational fruit person, Yagami Kengdu, does not know him, nor is he one of the 5 old stars. He is obviously a hidden figure in the Holy Land. So far, only 3 people have appeared, the 5 old stars have never appeared, and I am not even aware of it. The horror of the world government is evident. Susanoo. Yagami Kengdu waved his hand, fighting gravity with the ability of a kaleidoscope to write round eyes. The two forces are in fierce conflict and confrontation in the void. However, this gravitational force is a large-scale attack, and even Chief Zero and Steel Skeleton Kong are also affected, making it difficult to attack Yagami Kengdu for a while. Dark Prison. The gravitational fruit-capable person raised his hand with a numb expression and grabbed it, grabbing the pile of devil fruits, the supreme knife, and the gems scattered in the air. Yagami Kengdu's expression changed, his right hand tugged fiercely, and the power of distortion surged. Boom! 2 forces collide in the void. But after fighting for a long time, Yagami Kengdu was still unable to draw out the powerhouse in the Holy Land. Yagami Kengdu, who had lost his character, disappeared in midair under the roaring pursuit of Gengukong. Standing in the sky, seeing that Yagami Kengdu has disappeared, the fists of steel bones are cracking, and there has never been such a moment of anger. At this moment, he realized that Yagami Kengdu is not impossible to leave at all. Even if it is besieged by the 3 powerhouses. At the same time, he couldn't help but think in his heart, wait a minute, if the 5 old stars knew about this matter, what kind of consequences would it lead to? Thinking about it made his head hurt. Can't catch up. Corner of Mr. Ren's mouth. Move. He knows why the previous chief was so miserable. There are 3 of them here. Needless to say, their strength is definitely the top of the sea, but they still can't keep a Yashin Kengdu. The last gravitational fruit person is also suspended in the sky. Except for the 3, Steel Skeleton Kong uses moon steps, and everyone else has the ability to fly. He raised his head and looked in the direction where Yagami Kengdu had disappeared, looked at it for 2 times, and then withdrew his gaze. Tien Suo, why are you here? Cyborg Kong looked at his face and couldn't help but said in a deep voice. Same as Steel Bone, Iron Fist, etc. It is a title, and it is also the title used by Qingzi Akainu Kyabu and others before, and it is not in harmony, the title linked to animals of the same era as him. When he was promoted to the rank of Admiral, the other party chose to retire and then disappeared. I didn't expect to appear in the Holy Land today. If you want to know, just ask the 5 old stars. Tiansuo replied with a blank face, and flew to the red clay below. Royal Guard. This is his current identity, directly belonging to Im's bodyguard. Above it, Lao Xing only knew of his existence and could not command him. Cyborg Kong knows that there are a lot of hidden things in the world government. With his current status, there are very few things that he can hide. Chapter 273. Return, the idea of soul fruit. But, because he is not a Tianlong person, he has no noble status. Therefore, some of the most core things, he still can't touch, and can't touch. Just like in a country, a general is promoted to a general and a marshal, but it is impossible to be promoted to an emperor, and the position of the general marshal has reached its peak. 5 old stars. Steel Skeleton shook his head. He knew some things, but didn't want to think about it so much. His position is the world government, standing on the side of the government, protecting the world, that's all. After learning of the loss, the 5 old stars were naturally furious. For a time, the 5 people almost lost their minds and ordered the navy to attack the Yagami pirates, but in the end they held back. At this time, to send the navy to deal with the 8 gods pirates, there is no doubt that all members must be dispatched. It is far from enough to just go to 1 or 2 admirals and bring a peach rabbit tea dolphin. And if you do, the risk involved is too great. In case the other 4 emperor pirates knew about this, and if they attacked the navy, or if a certain force suddenly attacked the navy headquarters, it would lead to a situation that could not be managed. And the biggest problem is that the existence of Yagami Kanto is too troublesome. Personal combat power is the strongest in the world. Gangji Yukong has personally appraised the level of Yagami Kangdu. If he is at his peak, he can fight against Yagami Kangdu. But, it's just a war. Now, because of his age, he is 1 point inferior to Yagami Kangdu. The ability to escape is the strongest in the world. Under the strength of the 4 generals, he retreated calmly, and in the face of the 3 major forces of Steel Skeleton Kong, the chief commander, and the royal court's inner guards, he also left calmly. This ability, it is possible to take a day trip to the Navy headquarters when you are bored. With the strongest combat power, the survivability is also the strongest. This is undoubtedly like the combination of Kaido and Whitebeard, a character that can't be trickier. How about the warehouse? After Wu Laoxing restrained his anger, he asked other officials. Forehead straps for officers in charge of core warehouses. Said with some fear, there are 14 devil fruits missing, 666 ancient species, 3 phantom beasts, 2 natural types. Listening to the report, the foreheads of the 5 old stars are blue. Fortunately, I have already listened to Gangu's brief report before, and I know how much Yagami Kangdu has taken away. The devil fruit has already gone through fire again, and this time there is no gaffe. After half a day. Sky Island Bika. In the palace, on a table, several devil fruits were quietly placed there. Nina was holding a one to observe. After looking at it, she put it back. Yagami Kangdu lay leisurely on the chair and asked. How about 2 animals of ancient species, 1 of phantom beasts, 1 of nature, and 1 of human? Nina said to Yagami Kang. Yagami Kangdu picked up the soul fruit and asked, this is the soul fruit, right? Nina confirmed, that's right. That's fine. Yagami Kangdu nodded. Other devil fruits are also very important, but to him, they are still not as important as soul fruit. Putting the soul fruit in his pocket, Yagami Kangdu looked at the other 4 devil fruits and asked, what kind of ability is the nature element? The ancient species are also very strong, but they still have to be sidelined compared to the natural and phantom species. Nature is the hurricane fruit. Kingta got 4 precious devil fruits in addition to the soul fruit, especially the 2 natural and eudemons. Hurricane fruit. It is also one of the top devil fruits, which can easily create storms. Hurricane. Yagami Kingdu continued to ask, what about the phantom beasts? Animal system, King Kong fruit, phantom beast species. King Kong ape-man form. Nina picked up the Vajra fruit, which has patterns similar to chimpanzees. PFFT. Ape-god Kingdu almost spit out a mouthful of water and said, King Kong still has this kind of thing. Nina looked at Yagami Kingdu strangely, and said, the phantom beasts are originally fantasy species, and it doesn't matter whether they exist or not. Yes. Avyashin Kang's mouth twitched slightly. Mainly, this eudemon species reminded him of Donkey Kong in a certain movie. However, even if there are giant Buddhas, phoenixes, and vampires, the King Kong is not something extraordinary. What are you going to do with these devil fruits? Nina asked Yagami Kanto. Even 2 ancient species, at least, can create a powerhouse that is comparable to the vice captain, or even better. As for the hurricane and King Kong, not to mention the 3 disasters. Hurricane and King Kong are temporarily left, and the 2 ancient species can be used as rewards to reward those with high credit, giving priority to the giants. Yagami Kanto thought for a while. The giants eat the devil fruit of the animal system, they will get the bonus of the animal system on the basis of their already extremely strong physique, which is more advantageous than that of ordinary humans. As for Hurricane and King Kong, Yagami Kingta doesn't plan to release them for the time being. Especially the hurricane fruit, he still has some plans in his heart. Like the created fire cloud Prometheus and thunder cloud Zeus, its power is beyond doubt. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 274, Caesar's Fusion Experiment. In the case of full bursts, even if it is not as good as the Admiral of the Navy, at least, there is an attack power of the level of the 3 disasters. And fire clouds and thunder clouds are purely soul incarnations made from soul fruits, combined with ordinary fire and thunder clouds. If Yagami Kingdu uses the hurricane fruit of the nature department to make a storm avatar that belongs to him, then I am afraid that the strength of this avatar alone can be comparable to that of a naval admiral. In this case, there is no need to give giant 8. Of course. It is estimated that this kind of incarnation of Yagami Kingdu cannot be produced without limit. After all, only 2 are produced, maybe 2 or 3 are the upper limit. Understood. Nina nodded and put away the King Kong fruit and hurricane fruit. Yagami Kingta watched Nina lock the 2 devil fruits in the safe inside the office, rubbed his chin and thought for a while, then asked, by the way, Nina, help me investigate someone. Who? Nina closed the safe and asked Iori Soto. Yagami Kanto described the appearance of the person with the ability to gravitational fruit that he encountered in the Holy Land, and asked Nina to draw a picture. It's almost like this. Okay. Nina put down her pen and nodded lightly after looking at the picture. Left the office with the picture and went to the intelligence officers under my command to investigate the origin of this person. Handing the hurricane fruit to Nina to keep, and asking Nina to investigate the ability of the gravitational fruit, Yagami Soto left the Sky Island Bika and came to the Cake Island. Master Yagami Kingdu. Today's Cake Island has completed the base construction, there are strict patrols, and there are no dead ends monitoring of various monitoring phone bugs. Seeing the arrival of Yagami Kanto, the patrolling guards immediately respectfully salute the Yagami Kingdu. The interior of the base is no longer as empty as before, but is divided into three areas. The first area is the medical area. The area is under the sole management of Gertz and is responsible for the rehabilitation of an injured person. The second area is Caesar's research. Although Caesar is in charge, Nina has the right to control and monitor the institute. And Caesar's assistant, the door, is responsible for monitoring Caesar's every move. Although Caesar was very afraid of death, it was impossible to escape under the eyes of Yagami Kanto. But no one knows if he will do any little tricks, and such surveillance is justified. As for the last area, this area was constructed the latest, but it occupies the largest area. It is the manufacturing base of clones, and is solely responsible for Vince Mokraju. After Iori Soto walked forward for a while, he happened to meet Reiju, who came out of the base. Master Yagami Kangdu, why are you here? Seeing Iori Kangdu, Reiju smiled warmly, saluted and greeted Iori Kangdu. I have something to do with Caesar. Yagami Kangdu responded, paused for a while, and said, how is the clone army going on recently? How many people have it expanded? Reiju said, because of sufficient resources, it has expanded to more than 200 people. That's not bad. Eight God Kangdu smiled, patted Reiju's head, and said, keep working hard. Facing Yagami Kangdu's actions, Reiju did not feel any discomfort, but instead smiled, feeling very favored. Yagami Kangdu, he had no intention of doing anything else, but came all the way to Caesar's experimental area. Pushing open the door of the laboratory, Yagami Kangdu walked in directly. Who, if you don't knock on the door? When Caesar heard the door being pushed open, he was holding a few test tubes and looked back in annoyance. But when his eyes touched Yagami Kangdu, the annoyance on his face suddenly turned into a smirk. Ah, it's Lord Yagami Kangdu, you're here. During this time, Caesar was responsible for cooperating with the transformation of his body. It is also inappropriate to say remodeling, because his current job is very complicated. On the one hand, cooperate with Reiju, and try to improve the strength of those clone soldiers. On the other hand, it cooperates with Gears, and also studies the purely physical aspect. I asked you to prepare before, the object fusion devil fruit, are you ready? Yagami Kangdu walked in, and asked directly without looking at what Caesar was studying. Caesar breathed a sigh of relief and said, this has already been prepared. Good. Yagami Kangdu took out the demon sword Murasama hanging from his waist, and as soon as his fingers loosened, Murasama pinned it directly to the ground. At the same time, his other hand took out the soul fruit. After taking out the soul fruit and the demon sword Muramura, Yagami Kangdu stared at Caesar and said, the superhuman devil fruit is fused into the body, you are sure it is feasible? Animals can be merged, this Yagami Kangdu knows it. But the Superman is fused into the body, and he has not seen it yet. Caesar said yes, but Yagami Kanto had reservations. Chapter 275, Devil Fruit Fusion, Obstruction of Progress. This is indeed doable. Caesar also knew that the matter was important, and said solemnly, I have done in-depth research on devil fruits before, and I participated in the whole experiment of fusion of animal systems with devil fruits. As for the fusion of superhumans with devil fruits, Caesar spoke, he pointed to a water glass not far away, and said, not long ago, I did an experiment with superhuman fruits, and the experiment was successful. If you're worried, you can do a second test. Yagami Kangdu turned his head to look at the water cup in the distance, and said with a little surprise, you tested the superhuman-type fruit, where did you get the superhuman-type devil fruit? Oh, someone sent it not long ago, it should have been collected by your subordinates. Caesar tilted his head. Yagami Kanto regained his composure. He is now the 4 Emperor Pirates, with power all over the sea, and it is very common for people under his command to find the devil fruit. Ordinary superhuman devil fruits with low value, it's nothing to use as a test. Like the jumping fruit, Yagami Kanto doesn't think it has much effect. Go to the water glass. Yagami Kangdu took it off the test stand, and the moment he touched the cup, he noticed a slight difference in the cup. Although it is different from the animal fusion object, which directly becomes a special animal with life, it also seems to have its own life. Yagami Kanto can reach its consciousness. A thought moves. Yagami Soto manipulated the water cup and used the power of the devil fruit that was fused with this water cup. Then I saw the water cup jump out of thin air. Quote. Jumping fruit. Of Yashin Kang's mouth twitched slightly. He was still thinking about it just now, but the result was really jumping fruit. The leaping fruit is not really a valuable devil fruit. It was used by Caesar for testing, and Yagami Kangdu didn't feel distressed. Since the jumping fruit was fused with a cup, and the fusion was successful, then the fusion of the soul fruit and the demon sword Muramura should not fail. Now that you have a successful example, you can start. Yagami Kangdu said to Caesar. When Caesar took the soul fruit from Yagami Kangdu and went to get the demon sword Murasama, he suddenly thought of something and said, by the way, Yagami Kangdu, the fusion of superhuman and objects will take half a month to a month. That's it. Yagami Kangdu nodded slightly. Half a month was nothing compared to the important matter of fusing the soul fruit into Yaodao Muramura. Seeing Yagami Kangdu nodding, Caesar's worries were eliminated, and he grabbed the demon sword Muramura. However, almost at the moment when his hand touched the handle of Murasama's sword, a violent will suddenly erupted from Murasama, attacking his whole being. Killing, crazy, bloody, darkness, all sorts of terrifying breaths made Caesar scream, immediately. The handle of the knife was loosened. The whole person turned into a ball of gas, and rolled several times in the distance, and then looked at the demon sword Murasama who was stuck on the ground with lingering fear. This is your demon sword, Mr. Yagami Kangdu, Muramura. Caesar's expression changed as he looked at Murasama, the demon sword, and spoke with lingering fears. He also has the information of Yagami Kangdu here. Yagami Kangdu's saber is the demon sword Muramura, one of the 12 masters of the supreme sword. This is also a well-known thing in the sea. There is a terrifying legend about the demon sword Murai, and every generation of its owners eventually went mad. However, in the eyes of many people, Yagami Kangdu is already crazy, and no matter how crazy he is, he will not go crazy, but it is a natural pair with Yaodao Muramura. Forgot that this knife is not very obedient. Yagami Kanto couldn't help frowning slightly. If Caesar can't control the demon sword Muramura, it may be a little troublesome to reform. It's all right. However, Caesar has regained his composure, and said indifferently, it's just a weapon, I'm a genius scientist. Although the demon sword Murakami is scary, Caesar is not something to mess with. In the test base, he had seen all kinds of monsters, and biochemical people, and he was still afraid of a knife. After obtaining the permission of Yagami Kangdu, he quickly restrained the demon knife Mura by means and sent it to the top of a test bench. Put Murasama into a glassware. Then, Caesar took the soul fruit and went to the experimental apparatus on the other side to toss it for a long time, and finally turned the soul fruit into a cup of liquid with a strange color. Pour liquid into glassware. Zitsa, the liquid and the demon sword Murasama touch, immediately. Make a squeaking sound. If you look at it with a magnifying glass, immediately can be seen that the liquid is infiltrating into the blade of the demon sword Muramura at a slow speed. Immediately after Caesar was done, pulled over a special magnifying glass and stared at the demon sword Murasama in the glassware. After a while, he raised his head with a frowning expression. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 276, Success, an epic-making milestone. What's wrong? Yagami Kangdu, who had never left, came over, looked at the glassware, and asked him. Caesar said a little embarrassedly, the material of this knife is a bit special. No, it should be said that the self-will on this demon knife is too strong, and it is somewhat resistant to the fusion of devil fruits. What would that be? Yagami Kanto asked with his face unchanged. Caesar rubbed his hands and said, the fusion will definitely not fail, but the time may not be more than half a month to a month, it may be more than a month. Yagami Kangdu asked, how long at the latest? Caesar continued to observe for a while with the magnifying instrument. And thought a little, it should not exceed 3 months at the latest. Good. Hearing it for less than 3 months, although Yagami Kangdu frowned slightly, he quickly calmed down. 3 months is nothing to him, and it just so happens that the nations also need to stabilize again. The world government has just started. It is inevitable that the world government will not find trouble. Then I'll leave it to you here. Yes. Caesar responded. He didn't breathe a sigh of relief until Yagami Kanto left. To face other people, but to face the 8 gods Kangdu. The 4 emperors, his pressure is really a little big. 2.5 months have passed. During these 2.5 months, the world government has carried out numerous retaliatory actions. First, it attacked some underground forces associated with Wanguo, and then destroyed a site of Yashin Kangdu in the West Sea, clearing the forces of the Yashin pirates from the West Sea. But Yagami Kanto didn't care. His rioting in the Holy Land Marijoa has been exposed, and the whole world knows that the Holy Land was almost overturned by him. In this case, the world government's angered retaliation looks like an inferior means of retaliation. Of course, this is the only thing that can be done. It is obviously impossible for the world government to attack all nations. As long as the world government doesn't toss in the waters of the 10,000 kingdoms, the 8 gods Kangdu will be too lazy to care. The loss of the world government this time is too great. It's normal for the 5 elders to go crazy. He's secretly having fun. And as 2.5 months passed, Caesar's task of fusing the demon sword Muramura Kazuma was finally completed. Immediately after heaved a sigh of relief. Report to Yagami Kanto. Yagami Kangdu did not hesitate, and then arrived at the base. At this moment, Yaodao Murray was lying quietly in the previous glassware, and the special liquid in the glassware had all disappeared at this time and was completely absorbed by Yaodao Murray. The blade of the demon sword Muramame has undergone a little strange changes, and there are some illusory black shadows and dark luster. Sword itself can reflect light and naturally has its special luster. But the demon sword Muramura at this time is different. The light and shadow it emits is not the reflected light, but comes from itself. It is glowing. Please be careful. This demon sword is fused with the soul and soul fruit. The will inside I don't know what has changed. Caesar stood aside and reminded in a low voice. He has a deep understanding of the tyrannical will contained in Yaodao Muramura. And after merging the soul fruit, he didn't dare to touch it. No one knows how terrifying the will in this demon sword will be after being amplified by the soul fruit. I see. Yagami Kangdu nodded calmly, still reaching for Murasama's hilt. As a dignified emperor, as the strongest person in the sea today, how could he be afraid of a knife? No matter how strong its will is, it's just a weapon to be held in the hand. As Yagami Kangdu's hand touched the hilt and held it in his hand, a strange illusory luster suddenly emerged from the blade of the sword. This illusory luster has no real attack power, but it caused the instability of Yagami Soto's power. A terrifying aura swept out, and the glassware in the laboratory burst into pieces almost instantly. Of glass and splashed in all directions. Who was standing beside him, was also directly blown into a cloud of gas by this tyrannical momentum. The whole person rolled backwards and flew out, hitting the wall of the laboratory with a bang. Fortunately, he is a natural type, and Yagami Kangdu didn't radiate armed domineering. This blow didn't hurt him. However, Caesar was terrified to death. The demon sword Muramura has now turned into a real, most terrifying demon sword in history. If Yagami Sudo goes mad due to its influence, then the whole Cake Island will be finished. Not only the Cake Island, but also the Yagami pirates will end. Fujitora and the others together may not be able to stop the crazy Yagami. Kangdo, hold on, hold on. Caesar shrank in the corner of the laboratory with a look of fear, praying silently. Kacha, kacha. The momentum surged, causing the ground under Yagami Kangta's feet to shatter. Although the structure of this laboratory is not sea rock, it is also extremely strong ores and special alloys. But in the face of the dissipated power of Yagami Kangdu, it was still unbearable. In front of Yagami Kangdu also crumbled inch by inch under the power of dissipation. Chapter 277, Supreme Demon Sword. Suppression with only one hand. Countless experimental equipment was shattered. At this moment, Yagami Kangdu could feel that the inner will of the demon sword Murasama was madly charging towards him. With a terrifying deterrent, he wanted to make him fear. This is not the will of the demon knife, but the ability of the soul fruit. Once he had fear, the consequences would undoubtedly be unimaginable. But unfortunately, Yagami Kangdu's eyes were always calm and indifferent, without the slightest fluctuation, just staring at the demon sword Murasama in his hand. Shaking round eyes was originally a manifestation of spiritual tyranny, not to mention Yagami Kangdu who swallowed the fruit of the god tree of the ninja world. Even if it is external strength, it is suppressed because the power of the world does not match, but the spiritual power is not limited. If the soul fruit can cause damage to him, even if the ant wouldn't be so easily obliterated back then. Do you think you can resist when you merge the soul fruit? The wills of Yagami Soto and Yaodao Muramame have already had many confrontations. As early as when he first got Murasama, he had fought many times. Every time Yaodao Murray was defeated by his ruthless oppression, and finally surrendered obediently. Now that it has been fused with the soul fruit, its will has been increased. With the ability of soul fruit, he began to rebel again. At the same time that Yagami Kangdu spoke indifferently, the tyrannical arrogance burst out. An unbelievable force erupted, forcibly expelling the will of the demon sword Muramura from the body. At the same time, the eight gods Kangdu fully gathered the power of the domineering on the blade of Yaodao Muramura, attacking its will with the domineering of the domineering. Ding ding, the blade of the demon sword Muramame keeps trembling. But even if it is a terrifying demon sword, even if it also incorporates the power of the soul fruit, even under the tyrannical impact of Yagami Kangdu, he still has no resistance. Just kidding, even if you have soul fruit. Can't beat Yagami Kangdu, let alone it's just a knife, it's obviously impossible to surpass it. Under the strong oppression of Yagami Kangdu's domineering arrogance, the resistance formed by Yaodao Muramame's will collapsed and was forcibly crushed by Yagami Kangdu's domineering arrogance. What would happen if the power of the soul fruit was defeated? As a human being, there might not be any strange changes. But Murasama is a sword and does not possess the human body and human will. In the previous confrontation, Murasama had driven the power of the soul fruit to try to devour Yagami Soto. But the power of the soul fruit is no different from paper paste in front of Yagami Kangdu. With his arrogant and domineering arrogance, the eight gods Kangdu directly smashed the will of the demon sword. Since Yaodao Murray doesn't have real consciousness, it's just some kind of manifestation of Yaodao. Therefore, after the will of Yagami Kangdu slammed into it, its so-called incomplete will was shattered. The will of the demon sword and the power of the soul fruit were completely smashed together, and unknowingly, there was a subtle connection with the will of Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kangdu was also slightly surprised. At this moment, he felt a very strange connection. The demon sword Murasama in his hand seems to have become a part of his body, like an arm and finger, which can be driven at will. He could even clearly feel the power of the soul fruit contained within Murasama. You can also activate this power with a single thought. Not sure what's going on here, but it's clearly a good change. Lord Yagami Kangdu. Caesar huddled in the corner, and after the movement gradually stopped, he looked at Yagami Kangdu cautiously. Seeing Yagami Kangdu standing still, he couldn't help but fear in his heart and asked tentatively. Yagami Soto didn't respond, but was immersed in the feeling that he was completely integrated with Yaodao Muramura, or that it became a part of himself. Master Yagami Kangdu. Caesar asked another question, and seeing that Yagami Kangdu still didn't respond, he couldn't help feeling a little cold. If Yagami Kangdu is really controlled by the demon sword, then something big will happen. Not to mention whether he will be killed by Yagami Kangta. Even if he won't be killed by Yagami Kangta, Nina and Helding probably won't let him go. However, just when Caesar's heart was filled with fear, he was about to cry. Yagami Kangdu's gaze finally recovered, as if he had returned to his senses after being in a trance for a long time. After he looked at the destroyed test bench and the cracked ground under his feet, he turned to look at Caesar in the corner. Well done. The damage here, go to Rhodes to repair it for you. Just in Caesar's fear, Yagami Kanto opened his mouth to Caesar. After the voice fell, Yagami Kangdu walked out of the laboratory. The new form of the demon sword, Murasama, can't wait to play with it. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 278, The Ability to Make Hormies, Soul Fruit. Hearing Yagami Kangdu's words, Caesar finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yagami Kangdu banned Whitebeard and became the strongest person in the world. It is impossible for him to be counter-controlled by a knife. After leaving Caesar's laboratory, Yagami Soto came to the place where the criminals were held. It is said that criminals are imprisoned, but in fact most of them are people who are too daring to invade the seas of all countries. By Shiryu of the Rain, used as test items. Yes, Yagami Kangdu. Seeing the appearance of Yagami Kangdu, many criminals showed fear. Of them didn't think that Yagami Kangdu, the 4 emperors, was such a great, lawless pirate. But the result was that even the captain of Yagami Kangdu couldn't be defeated, and he was defeated by the rout. Of course. There are also those who are not afraid of Iori Kangdu, and stare at Iori Kangdu with gloomy eyes. Yagami Kangdu came to the side of a fearless man, and drew out the demon sword Murasama. Asking anything, he raised his hand and slashed with a knife. The man obviously didn't expect Yagami Kangdu to come up and cut people, and his face changed drastically. But because he was shackled and chained there was no room to hide if he wanted to, so he could only watch the sharp blade slash across. But Yagami Kangdu's sword did not cut through his body, but swept past him, swept away, and split the cage into 2 pieces by the waist. Ah! This is... In the cage next to him all looked over in surprise. Just when they were wondering what Yagami Kangdu was going to do, their expressions changed drastically. I saw the prisoner in front of Yagami Kangdu, although he was not hit by the blade, but a strange substance like a soul rose up from his body. Sure enough. Yagami Kang fights the corners of his mouth, with a slight arc, Murasama in his hand waved again. Sigh. This piece directly swept across the strange mass of matter, cutting it off in an instant. At the same time, so did the prisoner, who fell backwards. This is one of the abilities of the soul fruit, soul torture. Once there is fear, lifespan will become something seen, overflowing, and being stripped away by the will of the capable one. Murasama, which integrates the soul fruit ability, naturally also possesses this ability. Yagami Soto looked at the group of lifespans, or souls, surrounded by Murakami, nodded slightly, and waved his sword. Under the control of Yagami Kangdu, that group of souls flew into a cage and merged with the cage. And the cage also radiates light, and has undergone a strange change. When the light fades away, eyes and mouths appeared on the cage. Boss. He came back to life, turned into a cage of living creatures, and spoke respectfully at Yagami Kangdu. Obviously. While possessing the ability to strip off the soul and lifespan, Yagami Soto also possessed the harmony. The ability to craft hormies, which gives life to the dead. Alas, the cage is alive. Several prisoners in the cage all screamed strangely, looking at the cage that suddenly became alive, the cage that could talk, showing a bit of horror. Yagami Kangdu stared at Murasama's blade for a few seconds, then glanced at the cage that had come alive, and said, "Watch them carefully, don't let the prisoners escape." "Yes, boss." The cage respectfully responded to Yagami Kangdu. of Hormes will be determined by the character of the soul fruit person. Yagami Kanto's character is calm, and the Hormes created is also inclined to be calm. It seems that the soul fruit. No, Murasama's will has been fused with me, and it has completely become my vassal. Yagami Kangto looked at Murasama in his hands and murmured. He has already realized that he is not simply possessing a sword with the ability to eat the devil fruit, but a situation similar to having the ability to eat two fruits. However, the power of the soul fruit is completely attached to the demon blade Murakami. It will neither strengthen nor weaken, it is completely fixed by Murasama. This situation is obviously what Yagami Kanto would like to see. Difference between a Murasama who obeys his orders and a Murasama who has become a part of himself. If it is the former situation, then Murasama is taken away by others. As long as others can suppress Murasama, they can use Murasama's ability. But now, even if other people take away Murasama, they will not be able to use its abilities. Unless Yagami Kanto is killed, there is only one master of Murakami, and that is Yagami Kanto. After confirming this, Yagami Aoto tried again with the prisoners in the cage. The souls of prisoners are stripped and given to cages and chains. During this process, Yagami Soto gradually discovered the essence of Hormes. The essence of Hormes is lifespan. If he strips a prisoner of 30 years of life, he can give the cage 30 years of life. Or evenly divide it into two cages, so that each cage has 15 years of life. This kind of lifespan will not be created out of nothing, nor will it become more or less, it is equivalent to a transfer of the soul. Chapter 279, Soul Incarnation, Bold Attempt. At this time, Yagami Kangdo also vaguely understood. Why is the fruit of regression, a fruit that can make people's physical age regress, not something of extremely high value? In this world, human life is related to the soul. The fruit of regression can regress, but only the body cannot prolong the real lifespan that is closely related to the soul. Even if an old man is regressed to a few years, he will still die because of the end of his life. That can really prolong people's life is the fruit of surgery. Yes. Not even a soul fruit. A soul fruit can strip the lifespan of other people, but it cannot be integrated into living things, the body. Yagami Soto cannot prolong his own life by depriving other people of life. Soul Incarnation. Yagami Kangdo pondered slightly in his heart, and after many experiments, he began to study another ability of the soul fruit, that is, the ability to make his own soul incarnation. The soul is related to lifespan, but it is an exception to the able person himself. To make your own soul incarnation, you don't need to deprive Yagami Soto of his own lifespan. Iori Kangdo recalled that there were more than one or two soul incarnations. The things that collect lifespan on Cake Island every day, are also the incarnation of the soul. There is no doubt that those things are also capable of producing advanced Hormes like Zeus and Prometheus. This point of view, the soul fruit is indeed an extremely powerful ability. If you make Hormes with various elements such as hurricane, freezing and so on. That's almost to control the endless natural disasters with the power of one person. Just imagine. Thunder roared, flames roared into the sky, hurricanes swept through, and frozen thousands of miles. All kinds of elements are intertwined and collided. I am afraid it is not impossible to be the capital of the four emperors. You must know that Zeus and Prometheus are such advanced Hormes. When they burst out with all their strength, their power is close to the level of the three disaster generals, and immortal. In the end, it is an existence with a natural body like a monster. In many respects, it does not possess the will of a true emperor. Because she didn't go step by step and reach the top with her hard work. If the soul fruit was in the hands of Whitebeard and red-haired Shanks, the power would probably be more than that. Make an incarnation of my soul first. After pondering for a moment, Yagami Kangdo came and looked at Murasama in his hands, his eyes flickering slightly. After mastering the power of Murasama, he already knew how to make his own soul incarnation. That is to fuse a part of his will with the power of the soul fruit, and use Murasama to cut it out. Here. It is the power of the soul and soul fruit that merges with the will of the Yagami Kingdu, not the soul and lifespan. Therefore, for Yagami Aoto, the capable person, making this kind of soul incarnation will not waste his lifespan, but only bear the soul and soul fruit and Murasama himself. After deciding, Yagami Soto took a deep breath. Meditate and concentrate, the will merged with Murasama, and activated the ability of the soul fruit. ZZ. On Murasama's blade, wisps of dim light gradually overflowed. Just as this ray of will grew stronger and stronger, and finally reached a certain level, Yagami Kingdu's eyes flashed, and Murasama in his hand waved violently. Om! That dim light was thrown out by Muyu and landed on the ground 10 meters away. After wriggling for a while, it finally turned into a black slime-like thing. It has eyes and a mouth, but doesn't seem to be able to speak. This is Homies created by the will of Yagami Soto, and it is the incarnation of his soul. Even if he doesn't speak, he can detect the other's consciousness. This consciousness is obviously impossible to compare with Yagami Kingdu himself, like a drop of blood from Yagami Kingdu. Although this drop of blood has life, it is far from being on a par with Yagami Kingdu. It doesn't seem like much. Kingdu frowned slightly as he looked at his soul incarnation. He didn't feel how strong this Hormi's will was, and the gap was too big compared to himself. Such Hormis can control the body of a person like Katakuri. After frowning and thinking, Yagami Soto couldn't help shaking his head. Anyway, you have to give it a try. Captain Yagami Kingdu. At this moment, Jeers finally arrived after hearing the news. He refers to Yagami Kingdu more casually, sometimes as an adult, and sometimes as a habitual captain. Yagami Kanto also didn't care much about the name. It appears to have been successful. Gilles naturally knew that Caesar was responsible for the fusion of Murasama and the soul fruit. Seeing the cages that were alive in the prison, he knew that the matter that Yagami Kingta handed over to Caesar should be a success. When he attacked Cake Island before, he is no stranger to this kind of Hormis, and he is also very aware of the soul fruit ability. However, now it is the power of Yagami Kanto. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 280, Alternative Clone, Katakuri. If it is said that Murasama and soul fruit are fused, it is indeed a success. However, whether my avatar can control Katakuri's body is a little uncertain. Yagami Kingdu looked at the dark slime and shook his head. Gals also looked in the direction of Yagami Kingdu, and when he saw the slime, he also showed an unsure expression. Come on, let's try. Yagami Soto asked Gertz. Gertz nodded. The two quickly came to the laboratory. Katakuri has been imprisoned here in the laboratory. Compared with him half a year ago, he doesn't seem to have changed much now. This level of powerhouse, not imprisoned for a year and a half, can wipe out their consciousness, otherwise it would be a joke to advance to the infinite hell on the 6th floor of the city. Aware of Yagami Soto's arrival, Katakuri opened his eyes. Just staring at Yagami Kanto. However, the current Yagami Kingdu has already ruled the peak of the sea, and naturally he will not be affected by Katakuri's eyes. Even if the eyes are 10 times more vicious, they are still indifferent to him. After Katakuri stared at Yagami Kanto for a few seconds, his eyes suddenly changed. Looking at the back of Yagami Kingdu, the group of dark-colored slimes squirmed over. He is the head of the original 4 generals, and he is naturally very clear about his abilities. This thing is obviously the incarnation of the soul. But after falling into the hands of Yagami Kingdu, the ability of the soul fruit has all been invalidated, and both Hormis and the soul avatar have died. That is to say, Yagami Kingta got the soul fruit. Let's start. Yagami Aoto had no intention of talking to Katakuri. He had already said what he had to say a long time ago, and now he has nothing to say. Gertz nodded and stepped aside. Immediately afterwards, Kingdu of the 8th God's shot, and the ghoul seal was launched. Katakuri's brows overflowed with blue veins, and his will confronted the ghoul's ability to seal. To be said that with the domineering mental power of Katakuri, he was able to resist the death of the ghouls for a short time. However, today's Yagami Kangdu, with the improvement of the three-color domineering, suffers less and less world oppression. Of the ghoul seal is not something that the current Katakuri can resist. An illusory soul was strengthened. Takuri's body is drawn out. At the same time, Yagami Soto pulled out Murasama, and with a stab in the void, Katakuri's soul was pierced by Murasama. Directly into a mass of strange substances, surrounded by Murasama's blade, and was finally absorbed by Murasama. After completing all of this, the eyes of Yagami Kangta and Jeers fell on Katakuri, and the eyes of both showed concern. I don't know how long it took. Katakuri, who was unconscious there, slowly opened his eyes, as if he was not quite used to it. Twisted his neck and twisted his arms. Boss. After it looked around in confusion, its eyes quickly fell on Yagami Kangdu, and he spoke calmly at Yagami Kangdu. Seeing this scene, Yagami Kangdu breathed a sigh of relief. Of the soul cut from the soul fruit to replace the souls of other people seems to be a success. Today's Katakuri has become a Hormes controlled by him. The next problem is that this Hormes can play a bit of the strength of the previous Katakuri. He didn't let Gals unlock the lock. Murasama in the hands of Yagami Kangdu directly waved twice, cutting the chain of the sea tower stone, and Katakuri also stood up. How much can you exert? Strength. Controls Katakuri's body as Yagami Sudo's senior homies. Although the will in all aspects is far from the standard of Yagami Kangdu, it is also equivalent to a small Yagami Kangdu, with many characteristics of Yagami Kangdu. He clenched his fists, felt the power in his body, and said calmly, I don't know, it seems that it is not difficult to master. Oh. Hearing the other party's words, Iori Kangdu was slightly surprised. He underestimated this slime. He touched his chin and thought for a while, and said, come with me. Yes. This Hormes is similar to Pugel's Metheus and Zeus, both possessing only a very simple consciousness. Responded to Yagami Kangdu and walked out. Coming to a room deep in the base, dedicated to testing, Yagami Soto signaled that Katakuri could attack him. This room is specially constructed, the outer walls are of the strongest steel. There is also a sea-floor stone interlayer inside, plus an unloading layer. Even if the sturdiness is not comparable to the core warehouse of Mary Joa, it will not be too different. It is specially used to measure the power of various weapons. Cut the rice cakes. Hormes' eyes flashed, revealing a calm temperament similar to that of Yagami Kangdu. The arm suddenly twisted and expanded, turning into a mace. Relying on the domineering dark-armed color, he slammed towards Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kangta didn't step back, but waved his right arm out.